Back to Power and Politics, everyone, and it is a busy and historic time for our nation and our state. A new budget for New York and the first black woman to be confirmed for the Supreme Court. Joining us right now, someone who's very familiar with both of those topics, Brooklyn Assemblymember Rodneyse Bichotte Hermelyn. Thank you so much for joining us here this week.
Thank you, Kurt, for having me on the show today.
Of course, and I want to talk first about that historic confirmation in the Supreme Court down in Washington, D.C. You recently wrote an op-ed for the Daily News regarding the confirmation of Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson to the U.S. Supreme Court. She's the first black woman to sit on the court. She will be later this year. In that piece, you wrote that judicial diversity remains lacking across the country, and that being despite the fact that, President Biden, he had numerous black female judges on his list of potential nominees. I wonder what your thoughts are regarding the confirmation of Judge Brown Jackson, but also what you think can be done to increase diversity on the bench across the U.S. Where does that change start?
Well, first I want to say that, this past Thursday we experienced her story in the making when the Senate confirmed Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson to serve on the U.S. Supreme Court, making her not only the most qualifying person to fill that position, but as a black woman, she will be an inspiration to other black women and many women of color who seek to be in a position of that stature one day. So I am just thrilled, given that I'm a law student and studying the law, but also as the Democratic County Chair, where I am heavily involved in helping candidates get nominated to our state Supreme Court. We work with a number of the district leaders and state committee members. We get the community engaged, and sometimes we need to kind of focus on the local level because many times the people on the local level are the ones who are making the recommendation. So, diversity in the courts is certainly very necessary to its legitimacy, function, and to achieving public trust. To get to a high court that is a truly representation of America that we live in, we need to start selecting greater diversity of judges to the federal courts, where only 27% of sitting judges are women and 10% are African American, to the state Supreme Court, civil and surrogates court. And Kurt, in 22 of the top state courts in America, no justices publicly identify as person of color. That includes 11 states where people of color make up at least 20% of the population. You
have so many different responsibilities. You wear so many different hats. One of those, though, we mentioned state assembly member, and you've been busy. The state budget here was a hot topic. A lot of hot button issues were included in this spending plan. Question for you, I think, is do you think this budget does enough to address some of the concerns that New Yorkers may have?
Well, definitely this budget has done a lot to address. It would never be a time where it addressed all the concerns that our state are facing. Right now, the budget is about $220 billion, which is a record. It includes $7 billion of over 4 years of childcare, more than doubling current spending. We have a middle-class tax break and a suspension of the state's gas tax, small business tax breaks, and to-go drinks that has been passed. $10 billion plan will rebuild healthcare workforce and build healthcare system of the future, including $1.2 billion for the frontline healthcare workers, bonuses, and a $7.4 billion in increasing for home healthcare aid pay. This is something that I fought for and have been fighting for with 1199. I know I've been a big advocate in increasing the funding for the SUNY and CUNY system. So this budget invested $1.5 billion in the SUNY and CUNY for the next 5 years. And it also expands TAP eligibility. It also revamps the state's ethics agency and JCOPE, which is also the Joint Commission on Public Ethics. And it will launch a new 5-year, $25 billion comprehensive housing plan. It
does seem, though, that the changes to bail reform really were a sticking point here for a lot of people there up in Albany, for a lot of senators, for a lot of assembly members. The governor really pushed it forward in that 10-point plan. Your thoughts on what was the final result of this?
Well, I think, there's somewhat of an equilibrium, a balance in what the governor wanted, and as well as what our communities have been fighting for in terms of criminal justice reform. It's something that we fought for in the past few years, where we wanted to reform not only youth not being criminalized or convicted as adults, but also making sure that the process of those who are convicted of a crime to get fair due process, speedy trial, a discovery that doesn't take years, where people are held up in Rikers Island for no reason. So there were all these issues that was the sticking point, and but there was also the issues of the height of the crime rate, which in many cases, and you can see the statistics, that mass incarceration does not reduce crime, but the people in our communities for some reason are relating the bail reform and the crime rate. The crime rate has increased across the state, across the United States. And that's largely due to the pandemic. And we certainly do not want to compromise all the reforms that we've done with criminal justice and bail reform. So it was a hard thing to go through, very sensitive, trying to find a balance for the state of New York.
All right, Assemblymember Rodneyse Bichotte Hermelyn, thank you so much for being here with us again this week. Thanks again.
Thank you.
All right, everybody, we've got more Power and Politics coming up for you in just a couple of minutes, so stay with us here on News 12.
At the New York